The wind cut like shards of glass across the frozen riverbank, carrying with it the stench of winter and something far heavier, fear. The man who stepped off the roaring motorcycle was known everywhere for his cold steel eyes, his leather jacket scarred by years of battles, and the patch on his back that made strangers step aside. Blaze, one of the most feared riders of the Hell Angels, a notorious but fictional biker crew, had a reputation carved from broken bones, brutal nights, and long, lonely roads. Yet even he froze in his tracks when he spotted the small, trembling figure beneath the dying branches. A girl, no older than 19, curled into herself like she was trying to disappear from the world. Frost clung to her hair, her clothes were soaked, and her hands shook violently as if fear itself were devouring her from the inside. Blaze had seen men fall, had seen enemies beg for mercy he didn't give, but he had never seen a sight that pierced him so deeply, so suddenly, that it felt like a knife twisting right beneath his ribs. If you believe kindness and second chances still matter in this world, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. For a moment he almost walked away. It wasn't his problem. It wasn't his fight. The Hell Angels weren't known for compassion. They lived by their own rules and survived by closing their hearts. But something held him there, something he did not understand yet. Maybe it was the way her breath rattled weakly against the cold air, or the way her eyes, wide and lost, flickered toward him as though trying to decide whether he was her lifeline or her final threat. He crouched beside her, his shadow falling over her like a looming shield. She tried to shrink away, but her body was too weak to move. Blaze didn't speak. He didn't know what to say. Instead, driven by instinct more than intention, he scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. She felt like someone who had been carrying a burden far too heavy for far too long. The ride back to the biker compound was rough, her freezing hands gripping the sides of his jacket as if holding on to the last thread of hope the world had offered her. Blaze felt every shiver run through her body, each one cracking a piece of the armor he had built around his soul. When he arrived, the other bikers stared. The Hell Angels didn't take in strays. They didn't save people. They didn't care about the world's broken pieces. But Blaze didn't stop to explain. He carried the girl inside, demanded blankets, hot water, and space. His brothers exchanged confused glances. This was a man who had never taken interest in anything but metal, road, and revenge. Yet here he was, fighting for a shaking girl he didn't know. As hours passed and warmth returned to her skin, Blaze pieced together fragments of her story. Her name was Lila. She had been running from someone who promised love but delivered terror. Someone who had hurt her, controlled her, and finally chased her into the freezing night. She had slipped by the river, soaked her clothes, and lost all sense of direction. She didn't know where else to turn, until the sound of Blaze's motorcycle echoed through the cold darkness like a final prayer. Blaze listened, something he rarely did. Her pain seeped into him like the cold water she had escaped from. He recognized that kind of fear, because once, long before he became the man the world feared, he had lived his own version of it. Trauma had shaped him, hardened him, turned him into a weapon. But Lila's presence awakened the part of him he thought had died long ago, the part capable of empathy, the part that remembered what it meant to be human. Days passed, and Lila slowly regained strength. She walked cautiously around the compound, keeping to shadows but observing everything. What stunned her most was how Blaze, this intimidating giant of a man, treated her with a gentleness he didn't show anyone else. He brought her food. He adjusted her blankets. He even repaired an old heater in the corner just to keep her warm. He never demanded thanks, never asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. He simply stayed nearby like a silent guardian. But trouble was never far from Blaze's world. Word eventually reached the Hell Angels that a furious, dangerous man had been hunting for Lila, a man with a violent history and a desire to reclaim what he believed he owned. When the threat approached the outskirts of their territory, the biker crew prepared for the confrontation. Some mocked Blaze for getting involved. Others warned him that the past Lila carried might bring chaos down on all of them. Blaze said nothing. But inside, something fierce ignited. He had taken in this broken girl. He had protected her. And now, for the first time in years, he felt he had something worth fighting for. Not out of rage, but out of a strange, unfamiliar sense of purpose. The showdown was brutal. Heavy fists, roaring engines, snow kicked up into blinding clouds. Lila's pursuer arrived screaming threats, but Blaze met him with a fury carved from years of pain he had never allowed himself to heal. What surprised everyone wasn't the violence, Blaze was capable of that, but the restraint he showed. He stood between Lila and her past like a wall of iron, telling the man without words that she was no longer a victim. The battle ended with the pursuer defeated and driven away, but Blaze never raised a hand more than necessary. It was the first time the Hell Angel saw him fight not to destroy but to protect. Somewhere amid the chaos, Lila realized she wasn't just safe, she was seen. Blaze, the man she once feared at first glance, had become the shield she never knew existed, and Blaze, who believed his soul was nothing but rust and scars, found a spark of redemption in her presence. Lila taught him that even the most hardened hearts could thaw, and Blaze taught her that strength didn't always roar. Sometimes it simply refused to let someone fall. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, and share it. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people who need them. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Blaze's shoes?